Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Greg. I'm the Deputy Consul General at the U.S. Embassy here in Kyiv, and today we're here to follow up our diversity visa Q&A session from a couple of months ago with a Q&A session on the Summer Work and Travel Program. I'm joined today by one of my colleagues, Anna, one of our local staff, and by Kim, one of the consular officers at the embassy. And this year, Kim is going to be the coordinator for the Summer Work and Travel Program. And we'll be happy to answer your questions as much as we can today. So please feel free to write in below and let us know what you're thinking about. Every year here in Kyiv, we interview thousands of students who go to the United States to have fun, to learn about life in America, and to make a little bit of money. And personally, I've been doing this for almost 15 years. And I have a lot of friends who've done some work and travel program, and many of them come back to their home countries a different person. They really learn a lot. They learn about life, and many of them go on to become very successful in their home country. So with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Kim.
Good afternoon. As you probably know, the Summer Work Travel Program is very popular with students all around the world. During the past 5 years, 2 million students have been issued J-1 visas in order to go to the United States and participate in this program, and that includes 40,000 students from Ukraine. Last year alone, we interviewed 5,000 applicants, and this year we are going to start interviewing for the program on February 20th, which means right now appointments are already available online and you can go on and start scheduling your interview. We will continue to interview applicants until the end of May, but of course, we really encourage you to schedule your appointment as soon as possible so you can make sure you get in on time. We also encourage you to schedule your interview 2 weeks in advance so you have everything ready before the interview. And now I will pass it off to Anna to share a little bit more details about the interview process.
Hi, everyone. So we have a little bit of a change this year. This year's program dates are May 9th to September 2nd, not like last year when it lasted to September 9th. So it means that by September 2nd, you have to be back to Ukraine, and that means you cannot work through the Labor Day weekend. We will also, I'm going to add a little bit to what you said. You are going to be scheduling interviews 2 weeks in advance. That means the last day of the interview is May 31st. That means that you have to schedule your interview May 17th. That's the last day when you can schedule your interviews. So please plan accordingly. You will not be able to schedule any interviews after May 17th this year. And also we have all the instructions for how to fill out your DS-160s online, published on our website, on the website page of the embassy. So please, you're welcome to go there and look up the instructions. Nothing has changed. Nothing big has changed since last year. It's the same list of documents and the same process, the same scheduling process. So please read carefully the instructions and follow them when you fill in your DS-160 or when your agency fills in your DS-160. We also ask you to please review your DS-160 if it is your agent who fills out the questionnaire for you.
Actually, that's a really good point, Anna, because one of the things us as consular officers, when we're interviewing visa applicants, is what's on the form is really important because that's the first thing that we use to start off our interview. So if your agency helps you to fill it out, that's okay, as long as the agency tells us that they helped you to fill it out, and as long as you make sure all the information is accurate. Because if it's not, it makes us really hard to get a fair interview for you.
We also have a little bit of a change with our rules according to the photos on your DS-160. Please make sure that you're not smiling on the photo because our system doesn't allow such photos, and that you're not wearing glasses on that photo. We will ask you to provide us a different photo if the photo that you provide us at the first place does not qualify. So I guess we will start with the questions.
Yeah, feel free to send in your questions. We're happy to answer.
Oh, and also we also wanted to remind you that, like the previous years, we don't have any storage facilities at the embassy. Like our guards will not be able to store your mobile phones, your car keys, and other things, or like big bags. So please plan accordingly and don't bring those things to the embassy so that you don't lose time before the interview. So we have a first question. I have lost my student ID card. Will it be enough to bring a letter from the university? So Kim, do you want to
Yeah, I'll start with that one. We do understand that sometimes things get lost. We prefer that you have your student ID card, but we understand that sometimes there are problems. So if you do lose your ID card, you do need to bring a university letter that shows that you're currently enrolled in your university. And just let you know, we will be, try to verify that you're enrolled, because that is a requirement of the program.
Yes. So let's go to the next question. Will I be eligible for this program if I am the first year student, master student? And also I want to participate in the summer work and travel program for the third time. What are my chances? Do you want to take this one?
Sure. Well, that's also a very good question, because it really brings one of the key points of this program, which is any student who's enrolled in a full-time in the university here in Ukraine is eligible to apply. And in general, at this time, there's no limit on how many times you can participate in the program. But unfortunately, I really can't evaluate your chances. Every case is different, and without knowing the whole picture about your situation here in Ukraine, your life, how you're doing in school, and whatever other factors that might influence our decision, we have to look at all those things. We look at the whole picture of the person when we make a decision.
Good question. So we have another one. It's in Ukrainian, but I'm going to translate. So what level of English do I have to get a visa for the summer work and travel program? Okay.
Well, we don't use any sort of specific like IELTS level or anything like that with English, but the idea behind the program is that you should be able to function when you are in the United States. For example, you are going to be working, and that means that you will need to have a level of English that allows you to do your job. We also want to see that you have a level of English that will allow you to participate in life in the United States. For example, if you have an emergency, can you call the police? Can you call an ambulance? Things like that. But otherwise, we don't need a specific limit. We don't look for some sort of test score to show what your level of English is.
Okay, moving to another question from Alexei. I have never been abroad and I don't have any visas in my passport. Can it influence receiving my J1 visa? I have applied. Okay, let's answer this part and then we'll move to the other part.
All right. Whether you have visas in your passport doesn't really make a big difference for us. Of course, people who travel a lot, maybe it's a little bit of an easier case for us. But as I said, every case is different, and we issue hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of students who've never traveled outside of Ukraine before for summer work and travel.
Okay, another part of the question is, I have applied for green card lottery with my parents several times. Is it important during the interview at the embassy?
So if we're talking about the lottery, which I assume that question is about a green card, not already having been in the United States and get a green card. One of the things in order to issue a visa is that you have to overcome the presumption of immigrant intent, meaning you have to show that you don't want to immigrate to the United States. I'm not going to say that having applied for the diversity lottery will say you can't get a visa, but it is an indication that you at one point had a desire to immigrate to the United States. So it is something that you're probably going to be asked about in the interview, and you will have to explain the reasons behind those decisions and why you applied and when you did and how you're feeling now about your situation.
So we have another question from Darina. What can enhance a chance of getting a visa? And let's add another one to that. Like, how are students supposed to look like? Their clothes, their haircut?
That's a really great question. I think we could have a lot of fun with that question. We won't make you wear costumes or vyshivankas or anything. Don't worry about that. Just common clothes that are comfortable for you. And especially as it gets toward the warm season, being that it's the U.S. Embassy, we always have lots of air conditioning. So it can always be a little bit cool inside, even in the summertime or the springtime. So that's your second question. For the first question, what can enhance your chances of getting a visa? The best thing that you can do is be honest. When you're honest with the consular officer, when you're honest during the interview, when you answer the questions that we ask you fully, that really helps us to get a better picture of you. And that's the best way you can enhance your chance.
Right. We have another question. If a student got a refusal on a visa interview, would you recommend applying for a J1 visa again?
And I guess I will start by saying this applies for any kind of visa that you've applied for, whether it's a J1 or a B1, B2, tourist visa, student visa. If you've ever applied for a visa and then you are refused for that visa, we wouldn't recommend that you come in and interview for any kind of visa, including another J1, unless something has substantially changed in your life. That is how we are making decisions about to issue the visas, is your life circumstances. So if you haven't had any changes in your life circumstances, it's probably not worth your time or your money in order to apply again.
Okay, moving to the next question. Are medical students, who are usually a bit older than the rest of the Summer Work and Travel applicants, eligible to participate in the program?
That's actually a really common question that we get, especially in countries that used to be part of the former Soviet Union. And medical students are absolutely eligible to participate in the Summer Work and Travel program as long as they are enrolled full-time at an accredited university in Ukraine. And as Anna, of course, she's lived here her whole life, but Kim and I, we live here too. And so we understand the culture and we know the rules. And so we understand that typically medical students are going to be a little bit older than regular students. And we take that into account when we're doing our interviews.
Okay, we have a little bit of a gap, and I wanted to comment on how to schedule an interview in our system. So you have an option of scheduling it through an agency, or you can do it yourself. There are specific Summer Work and Travel slots allocated for this program, so please use those slots, not the regular J1 slots or just slots for student visas, because this messes up our system a little bit, and we will ask you to reschedule if you do that.
And if I can add on to Anna's comment as well, we plan on opening up plenty of slots for everybody who wants to interview. So don't feel that if you see that the appointments are filled up for the next week or 10 days, we will open more. Don't worry about that. So you don't need to take from other categories because that just causes us lots of scheduling problems.
And especially I'll add on to that as well. Don't try to schedule an interview before you have all the required documents simply because you want to try to make sure you get an appointment, because that actually would cause more problems at the interview, and you could potentially show up for the interview and then have to schedule another interview. And so we don't want that to happen to you.
Okay, and we have a question. You are the consular officers. Can you share the tips how to pass a visa interview for Summer Work and Travel program successfully? How to behave during the interview, and what questions will you as officers ask?
I guess I'll take this. I think Greg already addressed some of this. There's no magic answer for this, unfortunately, but the key, as Greg already said, is to just answer honestly. I know it's very hard not to be nervous during the interview, but I promise we're nice people, and just try to answer the best you can for the questions that we ask.
And visa form too.
Yeah, and it will help us very much if you provide all the accurate information on your application, the DS-160, because that is where we are starting from in terms of asking our questions. And then, of course, as we go through the interview, depending on what you answer, that's how we develop our line of questioning. Sometimes we have to ask you more about your education. Sometimes we'll ask you about your travel. Sometimes we'll ask you about your family. But remember, we're looking at your overall life circumstances. So basically, anything we're asking is trying to get to that answer of understanding your life circumstances.
And if you're honest about things, and that lets us find out what's really going on. Sometimes, for example, I've seen where students try and hide the fact that they have a brother or a sister who's in the United States. And if you do hide that and then we find out about it, visa interviews are very short. So once we find that you're not being honest with us, that's pretty much going to end the interview. Whereas if you're honest and you tell us about it, then we can talk about it with you and we can explore it and make the best decision we can make.
We have another question from Marina. Can students from different countries apply for the Summer Work and Travel program in Kyiv? Who wants to?
We'll take it back since we both answered that one. In fact, we just discussed this question today. There's nothing that prevents somebody from outside of Ukraine from applying inside of Ukraine, especially if you are going to school in Ukraine. You should actually apply in Ukraine because you should apply where you are going to school. You are allowed to apply in a different country than where you're going to school, but your best chances are going to be where you are studying because the officers there in that country will best understand the school that you're going to, like Greg talked about and Anna talked about, that they understand the country circumstances that influence things that if somebody comes from another country, we might not understand. So yes, it's allowed, but we would strongly encourage you to consider the necessity of doing that before you schedule an interview outside of the country where you're going to school.
Okay, we have another question from Roman. Can students who attend, I guess it's like an evening studies, evening course, apply for the program? I'm going to take this one. Well, actually, I think I can comment on that. You have to be enrolled in a full-time university course. So usually evening courses are not a full-time accredited institution. And so we will not be accepting those kind of students.
And same for correspondence as well, for correspondence students as well. You have to be a full-time student, which usually means you have to study in the day section.
Yes, exactly. Okay, we have another question from Jan. It is such an amazing program. Thank you. I have participated 2 times and it was a great experience. I did improve, I guess, my English, and I have met many good people. And now I have friends in the US. Oh, I guess it's not a question. It's a good comment.
No, but we really like that comment. I mean, because I think what's being said there is exactly why the program exists. And so that's the kind of thing that we're looking for in applicants is the people who can see the program for what it is and that they are going to have a good experience, learn about the culture, get some skills for themselves about learning language and meeting good people. So
one of my friends who participated when she was in university, she always tells me it was the best summer of her life.
It really is. Okay, we have another question from Andre. When is the last day of registration for Summer Work and Travel? As we mentioned a little bit earlier, the last day of interviews this year is May 31st. That means that the last day when you can schedule the interview is May 17th. So please keep that date in mind. We will not be allocating any additional slots after May 17th. We have another question from Sasha. Do we need to have a certificate from a university, like a new certificate from a university, or is the one from December 2017 okay? Well, actually, this year we will ask you to bring your student IDs like the years before. If you have your student ID, you don't need to bring a letter from your university. If you have lost your student ID or some other reasons you don't have it, then please bring a letter, a new letter from your university. We don't have specific requirements, but I guess not later than a month. Get it not later than a month before the interview.
Right, because December means it would be from the last semester, not from this semester.
Another thing we're recommending that you bring is your grades of some sort. And there's 2 purposes behind that. First of all, the grades show that you are enrolled in a university, which is a requirement of the program, but also that we can sort of see who you are as a student and how seriously you're taking your studies, because of course we want somebody who is going to take the program in the United States seriously as well.
Yeah, so as we started commenting on the document list, let's clarify that one more time. So we will need to see your foreign passport. We will need valid passport. We will need to see your DS-160. That means your application, basic application that all applicants for any US visa fill out. Then also we will need to see the original of your DS-2019 form, which your agency will get from your sponsor in the US. We will also need to see your grade book and your student ID and your job job offer, you will, your agency will also provide that. It will be a whole package of documents that you will get from your agency. And also the last thing is medical insurance, which you will also get from your agency that you are applying through.
And Anna said that you need to bring your foreign passport, but if you have any old foreign passports that are already expired or canceled, for example, if you just got one of the new biometric passports, make sure you bring your old ones if you have any trouble in them or stamps in them, because it is sometimes useful for us to look at them.
Okay, let's pass to the other question. Hello, it's a question from Tanya. Hello, if I already participated in this program twice and I want to participate again, what questions can I possibly be asked during the interview? Who wants to take this one? Who was the last one?
Every interview is different, so I really can't tell you exactly what kind of questions you're going to get. Typically, we're going to ask you questions about your background, about where you worked, about what you did while you were in the U.S., about when you came back, and we're going to ask you what your plans are and what you're doing now. And that's pretty much the way every summer work and travel interview goes. We look at the application, and then we talk to the student. And that's one difference in U.S. visa interviews or visa applications compared to other countries, is we always have a personal interview. And so what that means is that every summer work and travel student is going to talk to a U.S. consular officer, to Kim or to one of our other colleagues in the consular section.
Okay, moving to another question from Anna. How are the grades in the grade book are going to influence the interview?
That one, since I think I already was the one that brought it up. Let's be clear. I didn't have the best grades in certain subjects when I was in the university out there. So if you have a bad grade, that doesn't preclude you from getting a visa. That's not a problem. But we are looking to see that you are a student who is interested in their studies, and that if you're only sort of showing up part-time and not able to maintain good grades, that shows us that maybe you might not be the best candidate to do the summer work travel program. So they're just one of the many factors that we will look at when we're looking at your overall life circumstances.
Okay, moving to another question from Yuri. If I lost my student record book, I guess it is a great book. Is it a problem for getting a visa? Well, we will need to see some record of your grades. So I think there is enough time before we haven't started the interviews yet. There is enough time to get those documents, and I think that every university keeps track and keeps score of those kind of documents. So please get some document from your university with your grades that lists your grades for at least a couple of last semesters.
And I'll add on to that in general, of all the documents, it's better just to wait and interview once you have everything. Because if there's any moment during the interview that we're asking for something and you don't have it, that's not going to be helpful for the interview or for the chances of getting a visa.
Okay, we have another question from Judy. Thank you for this program. If a student has relatives in the U.S., brother or sister or cousins, is it an issue, and will that affect the results of the interview? Well, Greg, I think you started talking about it.
Sure, absolutely. Already. Well, we come back to the same point again, right? Let's be honest, and you make sure that you tell us, because if you have a brother or a sister or cousin in the U.S., and you don't put it on the application, and you don't tell us at the interview, and we have information that you do have a relative in the U.S., then your interview is going to be over pretty quickly. So that said, there's no set answer. There's no single answer that applies. There are many students that we issue who have relatives in the United States. As you know, there's millions and millions of Ukrainians who live in the United States. So a lot of people do have relatives in the U.S. That doesn't mean you're not qualified for a summer work and travel visa.
Okay, we have another question from Maria. What passport should I use if I have two? The first one is an old one with visas, and the new one is biometric, and I guess it doesn't have any visas in it. They are both valid. Which one should I use? Well,
better biometric, I think.
Well, it's actually up to you.
It is.
You can use, if they are both valid, you can use the one that you will be most comfortable traveling with. We don't really care which one you use.
Yeah, we accept both.
Yeah, but you make sure that you bring both to the interview, and if an officer asks to see your the passport with visas, that you have it and you can provide it, and we can take a look, and maybe it'll help during the interview. Okay, another question from Tanya. What is the last day I can leave the US?
Well, Anna already said this in the beginning, but the last day of the program this year is September 2nd. So that is the last day you can be in the United States. By September 3rd, you should be back in Ukraine. Or on your way back to Ukraine.
Yeah, and basically, if you don't come back in time, that can affect future visas, or your chance to get future visas if you don't come back on time. So we know that there's technically a grace period after J1 programs, but for someone working travel, it's pretty clear that you need to be back on that date. And so if you'd like to travel some more before you come home, which we certainly encourage, make sure that you end your job a little bit early and let your sponsor know and your employer know, and then feel free to go travel around before you come back. And second, I'd like to say that certainly we know that this is a little bit of an uncomfortable date for you to come back, because lots of students and lots of employers want the students to work through the Labor Day weekend. Unfortunately, State Department regulations say that student programs have to end the day university starts. And that's when university starts in Ukraine. So that's where the program end date is.
Right. Another question is from Julia. I guess Yulia has already participated in the program, and this year she wants to go to the same job or to the same city she was last year. Will it affect the chances of getting a visa?
As we keep saying with many of the answers, that is one thing we would obviously take into consideration, and most likely at the interview you will be asked about that and why you want to return to the same place, because remember, this is a cultural experience. We want you to branch out and see different parts, and as you probably know, in the United States there are many different cultures, and so going to a different place might be more beneficial for you. But it's definitely not something that means you can't get a visa, but you should expect that we're going to ask you about that.
Okay, we have another question from Donya. Leonid, I have a little question for you. In my university, the winter exams will complete in March. And will this be a problem if I have my interview on February 26th? Well, our regulation is that a student has to complete 1 semester of studies. So if it is not your first semester of studies and you have some records of your previous grades through your studies, then it will not be a problem. If you have not completed this full semester yet, then I guess it will be better for you to reschedule your interview after you finish your exams so that we can see your grades.
And I guess the 26th will be one of our first dates.
Yes, we start on February 20th.
Yeah.
So we'll see you soon, Leonid.
Okay, we have another question from Tanya. She is a 5th year student, and after the summer work and travel program, I guess she will have another year in the university. Will this affect the interview and the chances of getting a J1 visa?
Well, I think, it's really tough for us to address specific situations here because we don't have all the facts. I will say in general, it probably is a little bit harder for final year students to qualify because it's natural that their ties to their university aren't quite as strong. But unfortunately, we really can't evaluate your case from here.
So I hope we'll see you at the interview. Okay, we have another question from Marina. What do students need to know or need to learn before the visa interview apart from the pamphlet, which is Wilberforce pamphlet? Please don't learn the pamphlet by heart.
Right. The idea is not to memorize the Wilberforce pamphlet. I mean, the idea of that pamphlet being issued to you is that so you are safe when you're in the United States and you know your rights as a worker when you're in the United States. It's not intended to be a test. Of course, we want you to know the information in there, but don't think that you should study that and, perfectly fine to not know every detail in there. In terms of what other things that you need to know, you just need to know you, really, and know your life, and be able to explain the reasons and what's happening in your life and why it is you're in the situation that you're in. So there shouldn't be any studying need to be done in that way.
Well, it's always good to know where you're going. I've done a lot of summer work and travel interviews over the years. And occasionally you do have a student and you say, oh, where are you going? And they say they're going to Myrtle Beach. And you say, where is that? And they say, oh, it's by Chicago. And that means that probably they didn't put a lot of attention into their job interview or into finding their job. And so it is good to know where you're going and why and where you're going to live. These are all things that are important to know, not just for the visa interview, but for when you arrive in America. How are you going to get from the airport to where your job is? So the officers may ask you about those things during your interview.
And to follow up a little bit on that, that means you should also know about your job.
Yes.
Because you're about to go spend the summer working there, where we're assuming that you know what you will be doing. You might not know every detail about what you'll be doing every minute of the day, but we want to know why you chose that job and why, what you expect to be doing when you're in the United States.
Okay, we have another question from Anastasia. Will the program be held in the year 2019? Correct.
Well, that's a very good question. And it's a question, unfortunately, I can't answer today. As far as we know, the J1 programs, all of them, including summer work and travel, are continuing as they have before. That doesn't mean that things can't change, but we don't have any information or any indication that things are going to change anytime soon. So as far as we know, yes, there will be a program in 2019.
Okay, we have a new question from Artyom. It's a question about grades again. How grades that I get in my university influence my chances of getting a visa? Well, I think we commented on that enough. Just make sure you have your grade book with you so we can see your grades.
Oh, and we have another question about the pamphlet, about your rights.
Yes.
As Kim said, we're not going to test you on the pamphlet. If you can come up and recite it, maybe we'll give you a lollipop or something. I don't know. But we're not going to test you on the pamphlet. We do want to make sure that you've read it. And so when you come for the visa interview, pretty much the first question the officer is going to ask you, the vice consul or consular officer is going to ask you is, have you read this pamphlet? They might even hold it up. And so if you've read it, please do say, yes, you've read it. Because again, I've done summer work and travel interviews when you hold up this pamphlet that your agency should have given you, that you have to read when you submit your visa application, and you hold it up and the student says, I've never seen that before. So please, if you've read it, just tell us, yes, you've read it. Okay.
Well, actually, if you do need a pamphlet, we will have them in our waiting room at the embassy where you will be having your interview. So if you really need to have it with you, because it has some phone numbers and like email addresses in the US, if you have problems in the US, you can you can get those cell phone numbers and addresses. So if you need it, you can get it from us during your interview. You can also download it from the website. And if you get to our website, the embassy website, and you go to the J visa section, there is a link to the pamphlet where you can get it. Okay, we have another question from Judah. Is there any work and travel program for a future pilot?
That's a unique question.
That's a very good question. I think that's a good introduction to talk about generally about the kinds of jobs that were with the summer work travel. I'm not sure that I've ever seen. Maybe Greg can just jump in something that relates to being a future pilot, but generally they are in the service industry and the hospitality industry. We see a lot of people working as lifeguards, working in restaurants, working in amusement parks. So it's not to say that they're not out there, but it's generally not the type of work that we see for the summer work travel visas.
Yes, but if you are studying to be a future pilot here in Ukraine, and your university is an accredited one that is listed on the Ukrainian government website, you can participate in our program, of course.
And that's the thing about summer work and travel, because you get to work in a different culture, in a different country, in a different language. No matter what career you choose, it's really going to give you a big step up, a benefit. Especially if you want to be a pilot, generally the language of aviation is English. And so when you come back, you're going to speak much better English, much more fluent, and your comprehension is going to be better, which will make you more valuable to a future employer here in Ukraine.
And also about commenting about English. All the interviews you're going to have during at the embassy are going to be in English, because we want to make sure that you are okay going to US and getting to your job and working through the summer and communicating with people. So please be ready for having your interview in English.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit about that, but we're not expecting perfect English. So if we ask you a question and you don't understand it, it's better for you to ask us to repeat it or say you didn't understand than just to try to get out to show that you know English. Because when we're asking you a question, we are trying to get information, and we want to give you the best chance of doing that. So if you don't understand, make sure you clarify with us.
Okay, moving to another question from Diana. If I have an interview for a visa before I pass my my exams in the university, is this a problem? Well, again, you mentioned it before. We need to make sure that you have completed at least one semester in your university. So if you have...
If it's your first year and you haven't passed your exams, then it's a problem. If you're not a first year student, then it's not a problem.
Okay, we have another question from Louise. If university studies start on September 10th, 2018, do I need to return back to Ukraine before September 2nd? Or can I stay in the US until September 10th? Well, yeah, I get that.
I think they're saying. So unfortunately, it's not a case-by-case basis with the program dates. This year, the end date is September 2nd, even if your university is different than that. We base that date on the fact that the majority of universities will be starting at September 3rd. And so the next part of your question in terms of if you stay later, how will you need to prove it for the visa the next time you come in? I mean, you shouldn't have to prove it because you should be returning on September 2nd.
Yes, moving to another question from Anastasia. Can I change the job after my arrival to the US? Well, you can, but you need to inform your sponsor upon arrival to the United States. You need to inform your sponsor that you have arrived to the United States anyway, even if you're going to stay at the job you previously chose. But if you want to change your job, please inform your sponsor and work with your sponsor to find you another placement, another job. Or if you have found it yourself, just make sure that your sponsor knows about it, because your sponsor is the one responsible for your service status. And we will be checking that. This is very important, that your service status is active and that your sponsor in the US keeps track of that and knows where you are and what you're doing.
And that's the sponsor's job. That's one of the reasons that when you pay the fee for this program, part of that fee goes to the local agency here in Ukraine, but a large part of that fee goes to the sponsor in the US. And their job is to help you and to make sure that you have a good time this summer. And so what that means is if you go to the US, I hope you're going to love your job. I hope you're going to end up in the fudge factory where you can eat all the sweets that you want at the end of the day. You might gain 10 kilos, but you'll come back happy. And if things don't work out, and if for some reason you don't like your job, you definitely need to contact your sponsor first. Not your agency, not your contact back here in Ukraine that signed you up, but the sponsor representative. They have a toll-free number that you can call or you can email them, and you can tell them you're unhappy. Maybe they can help you to fix the job, and so you can stay where you are. Because once you've landed in the United States, you found a place to live, you've made some friends, you've got a job. It's a lot of work to change jobs. Now, that said, if you're really unhappy, or if your employer is not paying you, or an employer is doing something they aren't supposed to, you need to tell your sponsor. And the sponsor can help you fix it. And then they need to approve any new job before you take the job. So if you want to take a second job, you can do that, but your sponsor has to approve it.
And I'll add for that is, of course, we don't want you to be in a bad situation, but that also helps us in the State Department. If we know that there are jobs out there that aren't treating their employees well and summer work travel applicants well, we want to know about that. And the sponsors will want to know about that as well, so that they do not use those employers the next time around.
Okay, we missed one question. There was a question about a student having a part-time job during their studies. Will that fact influence their chances to get visas?
No. My answer to that was I had a part-time job when I was in college, so I would consider that a normal part of university studies. Obviously, we know that you have to pay money while you're in university, and you have to find a way to pay for that. And if a part-time job is what it is, that's how you make the money. Certainly that's something that will probably be discussed in the interview, and that's perfectly fine. It's not a negative or a positive factor, really.
Okay, moving to another question from Yuri. Is it important to have a driver's license before traveling to the US? Can Ukrainian students participating in the program use their Ukrainian driver's licenses in the US?
Okay, so there's two different really parts to that question. The first part is it important to have a driver's license? I wouldn't say it's important because part of some work and travel program regulations say that you can't be required to drive as part of your job. It used to be 10 years ago that students could drive a moving truck or could do different things that involve driving. They could drive to their job site or to their place of work. And now that's not permitted anymore. And so you don't need to have a driver's license to go to the U.S. And also your sponsor should make sure that the employer who you're going to work for provides a way for you to get back and forth to your job. It may be public transport, it may be a bicycle, it may be that you live around the corner or on the same site. But they should help you before you get there to know how you're going to get from your apartment to where you're going to work. But yes, you can use your Ukrainian driver's license in the U.S. I know of students who bought kind of a cheap car for the summer to drive around in. Then you have to pay for insurance, so it can still get kind of expensive. Or you can certainly rent a car over the weekend if you want to go travel or on your days off.
But there's lots of other public transportation options to go do your own personal traveling. There's buses, there's trains, those kinds of things. So you don't need to have a car for sure. And I'll also at this moment take a point to say that this is one of the reasons why it's very important to talk to your employer and know everything about your job before you even accept the job, so you can understand everything that's being required of you. And if you do see a job, for example, that seems like it's going to require driving, and that's not, supposed to be part of the program, then that can be taken care of before you even get to your interview and before you get your job offer.
Okay, we have another question from Olga. Do Ukrainian agencies need to have need to get accreditation from the embassy of the U.S.? Well,
sort of.
Accreditation is maybe not the right word.
We are not the embassy, are not the ones who accredit the agencies to work in this field. It is sponsors in the United States who do that. But what we can do, we published a list of the accredited agencies. You can go to our website, to the J1 visa section, and there's the list of all the accredited agencies, Ukrainian agencies for this year. And we also want to remind you that if it is the agency who is helping you to fill out your DS-160, please mention that on your application. And we will also be asking you during the interview what agency you use, just for our statistical purposes.
Oh, and I want to say too that if an agency that's not on our list asks you to pay the fee, or if you do pay your fee to one agency but a different agency schedules your interview, please do let us know, because we want to make sure that the agencies are following the rules.
Okay, let's move to another question from Sophia. If I will find a second job in the US, will it influence my chances of getting the visa? I don't think that your US sponsor who is issuing your DS 2019 will let you have two jobs listed on that form. They only list one job. One location on DS 2019. But when you get to the US, you are allowed to have a second job if it is okay with your first employer and if it is okay with your sponsor. You have to notify both of them, and if they're okay with that, you can have a second job if you have time and willingness for that. Okay, another question from Louise. We have that already. Okay.
I think I'll add, going back to the previous question about the agencies, there is the list of the accredited agencies on the embassy website. So if you ever have any questions about which ones you can work with, that's a good place to get information about those agencies, or you want to check to make sure that an agency you've been talking to is on that list. It's publicly available on the embassy website.
Yes, and we also are in touch with all the accredited agencies. And so if you have any specific question during the program that you want to ask, you can either contact us through our Facebook page or through the Summer Work and Travel email, or you can also ask your agency to ask us this question, and we will answer that as soon as possible. So moving to another question. What are the reasons of getting refused a U.S. visa? This is a broad question.
That's a very broad question, yeah. You want to take it, Kim?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Well, so first of all, let me talk in general about, there's 3 things that might happen at your interview. 1, you'll get approved. That's a yay. You're going to be sent home and get ready to go to the United States. There are sort of 2 different types of refusals that you might get. One is called it's sort of a temporary type of refusal, and it's usually somehow referred to administrative processing. That means we either need more information for you, or we need more time to look into your case. And during the interview, the interviewing officer will explain to you what you need to do, if anything. It might be nothing. It might just be a matter of that we need some more time. So that's a temporary refusal for that moment. The other one is just the standard refusal. There's only really one refusal that you have to overcome, and this will be the one, if you get it for the J1 visa, is that you have to overcome the presumption of immigrant intent. And so if we aren't satisfied that you can overcome that presumption, that would be the reason for the refusal.
What it really comes down to is the way that Congress has set up the laws that we work under is that it's your job to convince the consular officer that you're going to come back on time. And if the officer is not convinced, then they have no choice but to refuse your application. All right, we'll take a couple more questions.
Sure. We have another question. If during an interview I will be asked about my relations, I guess, in the U.S., with relatives in the U.S., what do I have to answer if I have relatives in the U.S.?
I guess he's tuning in later. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, the answer is you have to answer the truth. And yes, so first of all, it should be listed on your application form. There's a question about whether you have any relatives in the United States, and you should answer that question honestly, because if you say something different to us in the interview than what's on the application, that's going to be a problem for us, obviously. And then also, just in case you're wondering what we're going to ask you about, is we'll probably ask you what relatives you have there, how they got there, what they're doing there, just a few follow-up questions about what the situation with your relatives in the United States is at this moment.
Okay, we have, I wanted to comment a little bit on how to get your documents ready for the interview. So your agency will help you a lot with that. They will prepare the whole package, so please have that package with you during the interview. And also make sure that you know where each document is, that if we ask you to give us the original of the DS 2019, that you don't look through all the papers looking for that. Please be ready to provide any documents that we might need. We won't ask you for any super serious or specific documents. We will only ask you for the documents from the list that we actually already published in our instructions. Okay, another question from Anna. Thank you for this live.
You're very welcome, Anna.
Because it is really important to hear this information from an official source. Exactly. This is the best source you could get. Can you please repeat when the interview begins? Okay, so interviews for this year program will begin on February 20th. So we will see the first students applying for this program this year on February 20th. And the first day of scheduling the interview was February 6th, but you can schedule the interviews right now, right at this moment. They are open. You can pick up a date that suits you and schedule your interview, and the interviews will continue going on till May 31st. That means that you have to schedule them 2 weeks in advance. That means that the last day of scheduling the interviews will be May 17th this year. And again, the dates for this program is, so you can start working in the US on the May 9th, and you will have to be back to Ukraine by September 2nd this year.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anna. I think we're about out of time, so I guess we'll wrap up. Thank you all very much for being with us today. We really had some good questions, and we look forward to working with you through the summer work and travel season. So thanks again on behalf of the U.S. Embassy.
Thanks very much.